Have you ever wondered why two people can say the exact same words, yet receive completely different reactions? One person speaks, and the room immediately relaxes. People trust them. They listen. They smile. Another says almost the same thing, and suddenly the atmosphere changes. Walls go up. Defenses appear. A simple conversation turns into an argument. What creates that difference? Is it intelligence? Charisma? Luck? Dale Carnegie believed it was something far more ordinary and far more powerful. It's the ability to understand people. For nearly a century, How to Win Friends and Influence People has transformed the lives of millions around the world. First published in 1936, it has remained one of the most influential books on human relationships ever written. Business leaders, presidents, entrepreneurs, teachers, and everyday people have all turned to its timeless lessons for one simple reason. Human nature changes far more slowly than technology ever will. No matter how modern the world becomes, people still long to be understood. They still want to feel respected. They still want to know they matter. This book isn't about manipulation. It isn't about clever tricks or persuasive techniques. At its heart, it's about becoming the kind of person others naturally enjoy being around. Someone who inspires trust instead of resistance. Someone who brings out the best in others. Someone whose presence quietly makes people's lives a little brighter. Today, we're going to explore all 30 timeless principles from this remarkable book. But don't think of them as 30 separate lessons. Think of them as 30 small shifts in the way you see people. Because sometimes, changing the way you see others changes the way the entire world responds to you. So let's begin with the first, and perhaps the most difficult, lesson of them all. Principle 1. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. If you wanted honey, would you kick over the beehive? It sounds absurd. Yet that's exactly what many of us do in our relationships every single day. We criticize, we blame, we complain. Then we wonder why people become distant instead of changing. Dale Carnegie opens his book with a story that's impossible to forget. In 1931, New York City became the stage for one of the largest manhunts of its time. The target was a notorious criminal known as Two-Gun Crowley. Police surrounded the building where he was hiding. Hundreds of officers waited outside. Bullets flew through the windows as Crowley desperately fought to escape. By every public standard, he was a dangerous murderer. Yet while trapped inside that apartment, expecting to die, Crowley wrote a letter. In it, he described himself in a completely different way. Beneath this coat beats a weary but kind heart, one that would never willingly hurt anyone. Think about that for a moment. A man responsible for multiple killings still believed he was the victim. Even after receiving the death sentence, he insisted he had only acted in self-defense. At first, that sounds unbelievable. But then the prison warden at Sing Sing made an observation that changes everything. He said that almost every inmate he had ever met considered themselves a good person. Each one had an explanation, a justification, a reason why their actions made sense. Very few people see themselves as the villain of their own story. And that's exactly why criticism almost never works. When people feel attacked, they don't suddenly become honest with themselves. They become busy protecting their pride. The conversation stops being about truth. It becomes a battle to defend identity. Modern psychology has repeatedly confirmed what Carnegie understood long before it became common knowledge. People learn faster through encouragement than through humiliation. Recognition strengthens positive behavior. Constant criticism usually strengthens resistance instead. Abraham Lincoln learned this lesson the hard way. As a young man, Lincoln was known for his sharp wit and cutting criticism. He often wrote anonymous letters mocking political opponents. One of those letters offended a man so deeply that Lincoln was challenged to a duel. Although the duel never ended in bloodshed, the experience shook him profoundly. From that day forward, something changed. Lincoln became remarkably slow to judge others. Years later, during the American Civil War, one of his generals missed an opportunity that might have ended the conflict much sooner. Lincoln was devastated. In frustration, he wrote a long letter expressing every disappointment and criticism he felt. But then, he folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and never mailed it. After his death, historians found it among his personal papers. Why didn't he send it? Because before acting on his anger, Lincoln asked himself a simple question. If I had carried the same burden, faced the same fear, and made decisions under the same pressure, would I have done any better? That single question stopped him. Sometimes the greatest act of self-control isn't speaking, it's choosing silence. Another story from Carnegie's book reveals the same truth from a different angle. The famous pilot Bob Hoover narrowly survived a terrifying accident after a mechanic accidentally filled his aircraft with the wrong fuel. The mistake could easily have cost Hoover his life. The young mechanic was devastated. He expected to be fired immediately. Instead, Hoover walked over, placed a hand on the man's shoulder, and calmly said, "I know you'll never make this mistake again. In fact, I trust you so much that I want you to prepare my airplane for tomorrow's flight." Imagine what that moment must have felt like. One sentence accomplished what anger never could. It didn't erase the mistake. It transformed the person who made it. That's the hidden power of grace. Criticism may force obedience for a moment. Understanding creates change that lasts. If there's one truth worth carrying from this first principle, it's this. Every person you meet is fighting a battle you cannot fully see. Every decision they make is shaped by experiences you'll never completely understand. That doesn't mean every action should be excused, but it does mean every judgment deserves humility. Before criticizing someone, pause for just one moment. Ask yourself, if I had lived their life instead of mine, would I be so certain I'd make a different choice? You may discover that compassion accomplishes what criticism never could. And perhaps that's why Carnegie chose this lesson to begin the entire book. Because every meaningful relationship starts the moment we stop trying to win against people and start trying to understand them. Principle 2. Give honest and sincere appreciation. Imagine living your entire life surrounded by people, yet secretly wondering if anyone truly notices you. Not your job, not your achievements, not your appearance, just you. If we're honest, nearly all of us know what that feeling is like. We work hard, we make sacrifices, we solve problems that no one else sees. And most of the time, our efforts are quietly accepted as if they were simply expected. Very few people wake up hoping to be criticized, but almost everyone wakes up hoping to feel appreciated. Perhaps that is one of the deepest truths about human nature. Long before we chase wealth, before we seek success, before we dream of recognition, we all carry the same silent desire to matter, not for a moment, not for a performance, but as a person. And according to Dale Carnegie, understanding this single desire can completely transform the way we build relationships. There is only one way to truly influence another human being. Not through force, not through fear, not through manipulation, but by awakening within them a genuine desire to act. And nothing awakens that desire more naturally than sincere appreciation. Not empty compliments, not exaggerated praise. Real appreciation, the kind that comes from carefully noticing something valuable in another person and letting them know you genuinely see it. William James, one of America's greatest philosophers and psychologists, once wrote, "The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated." Think about those words. Not admired, not envied, appreciated. There is a profound difference. Admiration often comes from a distance. Appreciation comes from truly being seen. Abraham Lincoln understood this. He believed there was hardly anyone alive who didn't enjoy receiving genuine praise. It wasn't because people were arrogant. It was because appreciation reminds us that our lives have meaning. Sometimes, one sincere sentence can become the turning point in someone's entire future. Carnegie shares the story of Charles Schwab, one of the most successful business leaders of his era. In the early 20th century, Schwab became one of the highest paid executives in America. People assumed it was because he knew more about steel than everyone else. But Schwab admitted something surprising. He wasn't the greatest engineer. He wasn't the smartest technician. His greatest strength was understanding people. He believed criticism rarely inspired excellence. Recognition did. Whenever someone made progress, even a small improvement, he noticed it. He praised effort. He celebrated growth. He made people feel that what they contributed actually mattered. And because people felt valued, they willingly gave more than anyone expected. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. That is the extraordinary power of appreciation. You don't force people to become their best. You invite them. Andrew Carnegie built one of the greatest business empires in history. Yet when people asked him the secret behind his success, he didn't talk about steel. He talked about people. He famously requested that his tombstone carry these words: "Here lies a man who knew how to surround himself with people cleverer than himself." Think about the humility behind that sentence. The strongest leaders aren't threatened by the talents of others. They celebrate them. Because secure people understand something insecure people never do. Another person's light never makes yours shine less brightly. Sadly, many of us unknowingly do the opposite in our own homes. We thank strangers more often than family. We compliment coworkers more often than spouses. We encourage friends more often than our own children. The people closest to us often receive the fewest words of appreciation, not because we love them less, but because we quietly begin to assume they'll always be there. And assumptions have a dangerous way of replacing gratitude. Studies on long-lasting marriages consistently point toward a simple pattern. Relationships rarely collapse because of one catastrophic event. More often, they slowly weaken under the weight of countless moments of feeling unnoticed. People can survive difficult seasons. What quietly breaks the heart is feeling invisible. Carnegie tells the remarkable story of a teacher working with a blind student named Stevie Wonder. Instead of focusing on what the boy lacked, the teacher noticed what he possessed. He told him, "You have the ears of a musician." Just one sentence. Simple, honest. Yet those words planted a seed. For the first time, the boy saw his hearing not as compensation for blindness, but as a gift worth developing. Years later, the world would know him as Stevie Wonder, one of the greatest musicians in history. Of course, a single compliment didn't create his talent. His dedication did. His countless hours of practice did. But sometimes, all extraordinary journeys begin with one person who chooses to believe in us before we fully believe in ourselves. Never underestimate what your words can become inside someone else's life. But Carnegie also offers an important warning. There is a world of difference between appreciation and flattery. Flattery says what people want to hear. Appreciation recognizes what is actually true. Flattery seeks something in return. Appreciation expects nothing. Flattery comes from the lips. Appreciation comes from the heart. People are often fooled by flattery for a moment, rarely for long, because deep down, every human being can sense the difference between being used and being genuinely valued. That is why sincere appreciation never grows old. It asks for nothing, yet it gives everything. Take a moment and think about the people in your own life. Your parents, your partner, your closest friend, the coworker who quietly solves problems every day, the teacher who once believed in you, the cashier who smiles every morning. How many of them know what you genuinely appreciate about them? Not what you assume they know, what you've actually said, because thoughts left unspoken cannot warm another person's heart. Perhaps the greatest tragedy isn't that we fail to love people. It's that we wait too long to express it. Sometimes, the flowers arrive after the funeral. The gratitude comes after the goodbye. The appreciation appears only when the opportunity is gone forever. So here's a simple challenge. Today, before this day ends, find one person, just one, and tell them something you honestly admire about them. Not to impress them, not to gain favor, simply because it's true. You may think you've given them a compliment, but in reality, you may have given them something much greater, a reason to believe in themselves again. And isn't that one of the greatest gifts any human being can offer another? Because people rarely forget the person who made them feel valuable, not for what they achieved, but simply for who they are. And once you truly understand that, you'll begin to realize that winning people's hearts has never been about saying more. It's about seeing more. Next, Carnegie reveals another timeless principle, one that explains why some people naturally inspire action while others struggle to persuade anyone. The difference isn't authority, intelligence, or charisma. It's understanding one simple question: what does the other person truly want? Principle 3. Arouse in the other person an eager want. There is an old saying that sounds almost too simple to be profound. If you want to catch a fish, don't bait your hook with what you like. Use what the fish likes. Most of us smile when we hear that. Yet somehow, when it comes to dealing with people, we forget this truth completely. We spend countless hours explaining what we want, what we need, why our idea is better, why our request makes sense. Then we're surprised when no one seems interested. The irony is almost heartbreaking, because the world has never revolved around our desires. It revolves around everyone else's. And Dale Carnegie believed this might be one of the most important lessons in all of human relationships. If you can learn to see the world through another person's eyes, doors begin to open that force could never unlock. Every human action begins with desire, not obligation, not logic. Desire. People don't wake up each morning asking, "How can I help someone else's dream come true today?" They wake up thinking about their own families, their own fears, their own ambitions, their own problems. That isn't selfish. It's simply human nature. And the moment we stop fighting that reality, we become infinitely better communicators. Professor Harry Overstreet once wrote, "Action springs out of what we fundamentally desire." Think about that for a moment. Behind every decision, every purchase, every friendship, every argument, there is a desire waiting to be understood. The person who understands that desire holds a quiet kind of influence. Carnegie tells a wonderful story about Ralph Waldo Emerson. One day, Emerson and his son were trying to lead a stubborn calf into a barn. They pushed, they pulled, they struggled with all their strength. The calf resisted every step. Nearby, a young farm girl watched the scene unfold. She didn't use force. She didn't argue with the animal. Instead, she gently placed one finger into the calf's mouth. The calf instinctively began sucking her finger, just as it would nurse from its mother. Then she slowly walked toward the barn. The calf followed willingly. No struggle, no resistance, no battle. The little girl understood something the educated adults had overlooked. She didn't think about what she wanted. She thought about what the calf wanted. Sometimes wisdom doesn't belong to the strongest mind in the room. Sometimes it belongs to the person who understands another heart. This principle appears everywhere in life. Parents often make the mistake of ordering children to study. Managers demand employees work harder. Spouses insist on being understood. Friends pressure one another to change. Yet very few stop to ask the simplest question of all. Why would the other person want to do this? That question changes everything. Because people almost never resist their own desires. They resist ours. Carnegie shares another delightful story about Andrew Carnegie himself. His nephews were away at school and rarely wrote home. So one day, Carnegie decided to try an experiment. He sent each of them a warm letter. At the end, he casually mentioned that he had enclosed a generous sum of money. The only problem, he intentionally forgot to include the money. Within days, every nephew wrote back immediately, not because Carnegie demanded a reply, but because suddenly, they had a reason they genuinely cared about. The lesson isn't that Carnegie tricked them. The lesson is much deeper. People move fastest when the motivation belongs to them. Another father struggled with a challenge many parents know well. His young son refused to go to kindergarten. No amount of lectures worked. No amount of pressure changed the boy's mind. Then the father tried something different. Instead of talking about school, he began finger painting with the rest of the family. Everyone laughed. Everyone played. Everyone had fun. Naturally, the little boy wanted to join. The father smiled and said, "You'll learn how to do this when you start kindergarten." Something remarkable happened. The child suddenly wanted to go. Nothing about the school had changed. Only the desire had changed. That's the difference between forcing behavior and inspiring it. Carnegie also tells of negotiating a commercial lease. The landlord wanted to raise the rent dramatically. Most people would have argued, complained, threatened to leave. Instead, Carnegie took out a sheet of paper. He drew two columns, one labeled benefits, the other losses. Then he discussed the situation entirely from the landlord's perspective. He explained how keeping a successful tenant would strengthen the building's reputation, attract quality customers, and create long-term stability. Notice what he didn't do. He never begged. He never demanded. He simply spoke about the outcome the landlord wanted. The final rent increase was only a fraction of the original demand. Not because Carnegie won an argument, because he aligned his proposal with someone else's interests. People don't buy our reasons. They buy their own. Henry Ford expressed this idea with remarkable clarity. If there is any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as your own. Simple words, difficult practice, because our minds naturally return to ourselves, our opinions, our needs, our frustrations. Seeing through someone else's eyes requires something far rarer, humility. It asks us to admit that our perspective is only one perspective among billions. Think about the greatest leaders you've ever known, the greatest teachers, the greatest salespeople, the greatest friends. They all share one quiet habit. They listen before they persuade. They observe before they advise. They seek understanding before seeking agreement. That isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Because people can sense when they're being pushed, but they can also sense when they're being understood. And those two experiences lead to completely different outcomes. Perhaps this principle extends far beyond persuasion. Maybe it's the foundation of love itself. Every broken friendship, every failed marriage, every painful misunderstanding contains two people desperately trying to be understood, while neither truly understands the other. Imagine how different our conversations would become if before speaking, we silently asked, "What is this person hoping for right now?" Not, "How do I win?" Not, "How do I prove I'm right?" Simply, what matters most to them? That single question has the power to soften conflict, build trust, and open hearts that once seemed permanently closed. Here's a challenge Carnegie would almost certainly encourage. The next time you need someone to cooperate with you, pause before making your request. Forget your own reasons for just a moment. Instead, ask yourself, if I were them, why would I want to say yes? Don't answer from your perspective. Answer from theirs. Because influence doesn't begin when people understand your goals. It begins when they recognize their own. And that's one of the most beautiful paradoxes of human relationships. The fastest way to reach your destination is often by helping someone else reach theirs first. As powerful as this principle is, Carnegie reminds us that influence doesn't begin with techniques. It begins with genuine human connection. In the next principle, we'll discover why one simple habit can make people naturally gravitate toward you, even before you've spoken a single meaningful word, showing a sincere interest in others.